This is the Guided Podcast, an interview with the fly fishing industry's top guides and brand ambassadors. On this podcast, we cover topics such as the guiding lifestyle, conservation, different fisheries globally, and gear and technology to improve your game. I'm your show host, Greg Keenan. Before we begin today's show, let's thank our sponsors. Scientific Anglers is the leader in producing the world's best fly lines for over 75 years. Scientific Anglers have set new industry standards with their SA Amplitude family of fly lines, both in technology and performance. See the difference for yourself today at scientificanglers.com. Show your show support and follow us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to Guided. Today our guest is David Mangum. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. We're doing well. How's it hanging out in Florida? How are you guys holding up?
Well, a lot of home time here with the family, which is pretty cool. Does get a little stir crazy with too much of that, since the majority of my life is out on the boat. But it's nice to hang with the wife and my 11-year-old daughter. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys are staying safe down there. So this is a great edition of Guided, and I definitely want to jump into it. So David, can you give us a bit of history as to who you are and a bit about your background and the fishery that you're fishing? The fishery.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm born and raised in Florida. Yeah. Born and raised in Florida, and I'm on the Panhandle. So I'm not in the Keys. I'm on the other end, up on the northern part of Florida. Mainly folks know this area for Destin or Panama City. I'm kind of right in between the two. I've been guiding for over 20 years. Guided in Alaska when I first started my career a few different times. Spent time down in Puerto Rico driving big boats offshore fishing, marlin fishing for a little bit. A lot of surfing and margaritas there. And then I've just been back home here for right about 20 years, pushing a skiff around with a big long pole, and I'd say 95% of my fishing here is fly fishing, but I do the light tackle stuff as well sometimes. So.
Awesome. And so you're fishing for tarpon. You're also known as fishing for redfish as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say, the two main species I focus on are redfish when the weather's cold, when we don't have tarpon around. But if there's tarpon around at all, I'm pretty focused on those. The tarpon is definitely the fish that has created me as a guide. I became a guide to chase the tarpon. Pretty focused on that fish. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. David, I want to ask you, and I interview a lot of guys from Florida. I have never interviewed someone from Panama City area. Let's call it that, around the Panhandle where you are. Is there a difference now?
We better call it Destin. Sorry, we just got to call it Destin. I don't know. Panama City, I don't know. I don't know if I can say that I'm from Panama City.
I don't know if there's an animosity there. I'm from Canada. I just don't know.
Maybe a bit.
But what we'll say is that here's where I want to go with this. Is there a difference between the tarpon and the Keys to where you are? Like, is there a size difference? Is there a difference in the way they fight, or are they the same? Like,
certainly they're the same and they're different. A lot of our water is dirtier where I live. We have a lot more freshwater influence that affects our coastal waters here, but that also brings more nutrients that come down those rivers in the form of decayed plant matter, which the phytoplankton eat and the zooplankton eat that, and the bait fish eat the zooplankton, and the bait fish, the main one, which is the menhaden, Patronus atlanticus, I think is the one we have. The tarpon, that's their main food wherever they live around the planet. So, that's why we have our population of tarpon here. They're here to eat and eat those menhaden. They're a high protein food source, and our tarpon, I would say, are bigger overall than the fish in the Keys. We have some pretty big fish up here. Not as many though. That's the one drawback for our area. There's not as many fish as you would maybe see down in southern Florida in the Keys. So
interesting. Is there a reason why there's just not as many, or is it just, do they migrate, or walk us through that?
Well, we do see some migration, where tarpon are, wherever they live, when the weather gets cold, if they're in a cold water place, the fish move offshore and they overwinter out deep. Then they move inshore throughout the Gulf of Mexico. It's not like there's a big giant population in the Keys and they start swimming up here and we get them. It's quite way more complicated than that. As we've seen through some satellite tagging that we've done over the years that I've been involved with, pretty interesting data there. But the tarpon, we do get some later in the summer when they do start a migratory pattern. After the fish in the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic spawn, they all leave to go find like the main food source. So basically all the fish in the Caribbean basin, or a lot of them, head for the mouth of the Mississippi River. There's a giant biomass of food there, and they kind of stay there late summer and eat until they move offshore in the winter. That's kind of the main pattern.
Crazy. The more I hear about these fish, I'm just dying. I was, supposed to go down in Costa Rica here in April and get one. These fish are just fantastic. I'm dying to actually get one. So with that being said, David, I know you have a big outfit out in your shallow water expeditions. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so here on the Panhandle, based out of Destin, Panama City, along this zone, I have 8 other guides and myself, and those are all full-time guides, and that's all we do is fish, and our guide service books those guides. It's like a big family. It's almost like a cooperative is how we look at it. We all work together. I'm not the head one, it's just we're all equal guides, and we build our clientele with the clients who come down to our area to vacation, and we fish year round. So
cool. And you actually started your career up in Alaska, if I'm not mistaken, guiding, right?
Yeah, I'd always fished here in Florida where I'm from, and I went away to college and was in college in Austin, Texas, and I was not doing much college and doing a lot more, being young and crazy. And I needed to get out of there, and I actually found the job, and I started calling the back of the fly fishing magazines back then, had all these little squares of lodges that would advertise back there, and I just started calling them and finally found one that said, all right, we'll give you a shot, and I flew up there and started guiding.
The days before Instagram.
That was my beginnings.
Yeah. That's
yeah, the days before internet, I think. Yeah.
I remember those little business card size ads in the back. Hilarious.
Yep.
And you were in Bristol Bay, right? And we're all aware of the effects with Bristol Bay. Now, is there anything in your home waters or any conservational concerns or issues that you have taken notice to around your area?
I'd say, of course, in my slice of the world, I've seen things change, and the number one thing that I've seen change, because I've been keeping a journal since '02. I've written down every single day I've ever tarpon fished in that journal, and I keep details of all sorts of stuff that I noticed during the day, so that I can look in that and see patterns. The water temperature is the main thing I've seen change. The water gets warmer a lot sooner in the year than it used to, and it gets really hot. I mean, I've on the flats on my boat seen water over 100 degrees that the tarpon are swimming through in the late summer. Crazy hot. But more so than that, the pattern that I've seen is warmer temps overall, for sure. And I would say that a lot of fishing guides that have been in the game for a while, at least here in Florida, would say that's a pattern they've noticed as well, from the Keys to up here everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And for those that don't know, like, that's just affecting the tarpon, how so in your area?
Well, the main thing it does is they kind of start doing their thing earlier, I'd say. We see them a little sooner because the tarpon don't have a calendar. There's only a couple things that they know that happens in their world: water temp and the amount of light in the sky. So the amount of daylight hours changes as the year moves to and from solstice and equinox, and those fish are aware of that, and they're aware of, oh, the water's warming up around me. It's like one of the main things that they know, right? Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, I'm not a tarpon, but we see them when the water hits a certain temperature or whatnot, and they come inshore, and we just see it change. Those it's happening earlier typically, so which kind of changes up a lot of different things that happens for me during the guiding year. So
Absolutely, for sure. You know what, David? I know it's always a challenge, right? These conservational concerns and stuff.
yeah,
But is there anything that we
I
can?
like the challenge.
Yeah, of course. Well, we all do. But what do you think? There's something that we could do, like immediately, to try and rectify this, in your opinion?
Oh God, that's such a giant nut to crack. I mean, I'd say the main thing, if I had to answer that in realistic terms, I'd say each of us could try to do a little more. That's the most realistic. I mean, are we going to change government policies and worldwide policies? Probably not today.
Sure.
But what we can do is, try to use less plastic. Use more reusable containers to put water in your boat and things like that. Just those little things, I think, can pay off if everybody starts doing them. So that's the realistic thing that we can do.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's what I was just going to say. That's the realistic, and it's an honest, approach to rectifying it, is what we can do for sure as anglers. So, David, you mentioned, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned about your book, your journal. I'd love to see that one day. I know you've written another book. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wrote the foreword to a coffee table book recently that was published by Yeti. And mainly it's imagery, but there are a few different essays by some notable characters in our saltwater fly fishing world. And I wrote the foreword of that. Yeah, it was quite a project, really incredible project. I got to be the producer of there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you share a bit of that with us? You can't leave us hanging here.
Share a little bit of the essay.
Yeah, well, it's more like the project in itself, and like, did you travel with Yeti?
Oh yeah, sure. My essay starts out with a fist fight, so
that's funny. No, did you travel?
It's a fun read.
Did you travel around with Yeti, like while they were creating this book, or what?
No, so all the images I put together the library of images. The majority of images in the book are my own. I'm a photographer as well. But I know a ton of people in the industry that shoot photos as well. So I reached out to almost 30 different people that I know, and some of that I didn't know, and put together a library of around 5,000 images that we culled down to, God, I don't know how many we had culled down to, but the book's about 130 pages. I think that's about right. Multiple images on some pages, but yeah, I picked most of the images. Worked with a couple other guys at a place called Talwig, and we kind of made our picks and set the book up. And yeah, I had a lot of control, which was great. It was the project came about when I was fishing with one of the Yeti owners. There's Ryan and Roy, and I fished with both of them. And Roy, staying on the front of my boat one day, said, "Hey, you ever thought about doing a book?" And I said, "Well, I've thought about it. It's just, it's a huge thing. I've never, have to have some funding behind it." He said, "Let's do it." And, almost a year and a half later, the book got, we finished it. So pretty cool opportunity.
Awesome. I'll definitely make sure I can link that book in our show notes as well. So, David, I did want to circle back to your, like, when you guys are guiding, and circle to the guiding for tarpon fishing. You have 8 employees, 9 including yourself. Do you guys all, like, are you all using the same equipment, or are they all same setup to successfully target tarpon? And if so, what is your setup?
Yeah, you know what? We're all pretty much using Orbis rods. The H3, absolutely love that rod. I've been working with them for years. I fished all those guys in that family there, the Perkins crew and other people at that company. So I've had great opportunity to work on the Helios line since it began. And this H3 is definitely the best iteration of that rod that they produced. I usually just typically on my deal, I just have some regular 30-pound backing. I'm going to try some 50-pound backing this year, just to because typically our fish don't run forever. But on my few different rods in the boat, I have the Grand Slam line, the SA line Grand Slam. That's definitely my favorite line right now that I'm using. And I think the rest of my crew is using that's our typical tarpon setup.
Awesome. And are you finding, what do your clients say when they're using Grand Slam?
Yeah, they like the way how it's weighted. I mean, a lot of times, some people bring their own gear, but of course, everybody over the years is, hey, which line should I get? What should I put on my rod? So I always suggest that one to them. And some of them I'll have put on a different taper than the Grand Slam. It just depends on their casting style. Some folks will need to put on the Titan taper because maybe they can't reach out as far, but we need to load quicker, sooner. And sometimes some of the guys bring different rods with different tapers just to, if we have low light conditions and we need to shoot close and fast, or if we need to reach out because we can see them coming from a long way or crossing shots. Yeah, but those are that's the main line I'm using right now. And everybody in the guide service pretty much uses the SA lines as well. So
it's the only way to go. You know what, David, I want to ask a quick tip for tarpon.
Quick tip for tarpon. So here's the main thing I would tell folks as far as casting. A lot of times they get casting questions. So everybody in the saltwater, or folks that don't fish saltwater, what they feel like, or the intimidation level is usually with distance. So people are concerned they need to cast 100 million miles, right, in the salt. I would tell you that if you have 40 feet, you can catch anything that swims in the saltwater, period. But there's a huge difference between 40 feet with 4 false casts and 40 feet with 2 false casts. What I mean by is the fly leaves your left hand, you grab the line and start hauling with your left hand and your cast, say you're a right-handed caster, and you're able to drop that fly quickly to 40 feet. So I always say speed is more important than distance. And what I mean by that is being able to drop that fly 40 or 35 feet even away from the boat accurately is way more important than being able to cast 80 feet. The quickness in which you can go from being ready to dropping the fly where it needs to be, that time period is what defines anglers. I don't know if that makes sense, but that'd be my tip. Fast casting, being quick, is way more important than being able to cast distance.
100% makes sense, David.
And that's not absolute all the time, but I would say the vast majority of the time that is the deal. So it doesn't matter what you're fishing for. If your guide's worth anything and you're spending a few days doing it, you're going to have some shots that are going to be out of reach, but there's going to be some that are pretty close too. And being able to go quickly and get that fly in the water and fishing it is how you catch fish. So that'd be my tip. Be fast. Learn how to be faster.
Learn how to be fast. I love it. You know what, Dave, before I let you go, where can we find you at?
Yep. Shallowwaterexpeditions.com. That's our website. Anybody that's coming anywhere here in Florida, and we also go and fish in Louisiana for a couple months of the winter, October, November. So.
Awesome. I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes. And David, I want to quickly thank you here for your time, and thank you guys for the listeners as well.
Great. Thank you. Nice talking to you.
No worries. You've been listening to the Guided Podcast, sponsored by Scientific Anglers. If you like this podcast episode, please let us know and leave a review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And remember, subscribe to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast to get even more episodes of both Guided and the Fly Fishing Insider each week. See more at flyfishinginsiderpodcast.com.